I've been putting together some wildlife boxes for the local bushland, and it occurred to me halfway through this glider project that I should bring you along and show you what I'm doing. I'm just going to jump in here quickly and talk a little bit about why you might want to make or may not want to make a nest box. So deforestation is the big problem we've got in our area, and it's a big problem around the world. Making a nest box, yes, it provides the cavities in the old growth trees that many animals require, but it doesn't replace the food sources. It doesn't replace all the other resources that they lose through deforestation. It's not the solution. And so in those cases, using wood, which has often been cut down from forests to make cavities for animals that can't survive in an area, doesn't make a lot of sense. So please, I don't want to discourage anyone from doing it, but please know why you're making a nest box. You're making it because you want to observe the animals in your area. You're making it because you've planted a lot of food trees on your property and you've got no old growth forest on your property, so it's a good place to put up a nest box. Please look into it a little more deeply than this video explains and find out whether it's actually warranted in your area. If you're building it to observe wildlife on your property, I am all for that. That is an excellent reason to have one of these. But I just thought I'd say that before we get too deep into this video. I hope you enjoy the rest of it. Let's get into it. This is a feathertail glider box. As you can see, quite small. Feathertail gliders are small. They require a small nest box. The hole's only 25 millimeters. I'm told that's quite important as that helps keep out some of the competing species. And these boxes are used by feathertail gliders and also antechinus. In my area, I know we have the feathertail gliders, so that's why I'm building these. I don't know that we have the antechinus. I know they prefer sandstony areas, and we do have a bit of sandstone nearby, so I don't know, maybe they are around. If so, hopefully they get some use out of these. I won't go too deep into the design I've used. Firstly, I'm not a nest box expert. Secondly, the species that you're making it for, it's obviously going to dictate what sort of box you use, and also where you live in the world, it's going to be different. And I've built this for my little patch here in Brisbane, Australia, so it's not relevant to everyone. I've linked some of the websites I found useful down below. In Australia, they recommend using 15mm plywood, and obviously the easiest available that's larger than that is the 18mm plywood or 3/4 inch. That's what I've got here. Now, I made enough for 4. I put one together as a bit of a prototype to figure out how I was going to dress it up, and I'm quite happy with how this is. Because it is a smaller nest box, I've just made the lid fixed. I'm not going to hinge it. On a larger nest box, you might hinge it so you can have a look inside and see how your nest boxes are performing. But I think any strong winds might knock the lid off. So, yep, just made it all fixed. I've done saw cuts along the front for easy access. I've also done saw cuts up the inside of this side here so they can climb up on the inside and get out. The reason I did this side is because I could just do the saw cuts the whole way across and it didn't matter, they didn't show on the outside. So that's what the final product's going to look like. Put together with screws, no glue. Of course, glue wouldn't survive too long. Well, the normal wood glue I use wouldn't survive too long out in the bush, with all the expanding and contracting that goes on and getting wet and whatnot. So no glue, just screws to put this together. Now to quickly show you the parts, I've got, what have we got? Backs and fronts, which are the same. I don't know why I bothered labeling them. They go on there, back and front. Then I've got the lids, the high side, and the low sides. And then obviously the base. The base goes inside with your drainage holes to let water out. I might make those a bit larger. I'll see what's recommended. I wasn't too precious about how I marked out the various features on the box, like the hole and the slots for climbing. Nature's pretty variable, so I don't think the little gliders will care too much. I used the table saw to do the cross cuts for the grip on the inside of the box and on the front of the box. I just put a little mark on my table saw top with a pencil so I could space them fairly evenly. Again, I'm not being too particular about that. I then brought everything into the workbench for construction. I was putting it together with screws, and because I'm going into the end of plywood, I did use pilot holes. At first, I put everything together dry. I wasn't planning on using glue. A lot of the instructions had suggested not using any. But after a bit more reading, I did go back, and I did this off camera, and you pulled everything apart and redid it with construction adhesive, just for a bit more longevity and make these boxes a bit sturdier. I cut the angles on the boxes at 10 degrees using my miter gauge. This is an Incra miter gauge, and I actually got this in a bundle I purchased, but gee whiz, it's good. Of course, being the awesome videographer that I am, I accidentally deleted that footage, but here they are with the angles cut. You can see they're not perfect, but they're close enough. The holes I made using a 25mm spade bit. You could also use a hole saw if you wanted. Not being too careful about these. Again, nature isn't uniform, so I don't think these nest boxes have to be either. A tool I really didn't appreciate until I actually owned was this little battery powered blower. It just takes the same batteries as my other tools, in my case Makita, and all the big battery tool providers have a version of this, but it's so good for cleanup. Particularly out on this awning where I do a lot of cutting, I can just blow it off. It's excellent. Back at the workbench, and I attached the tops the same way I constructed the boxes. Pilot holes and screws. And I also decided to put these tabs on the side. I hadn't really considered how I was going to attach these to the tree. I thought maybe a wire around the tree with springs on it. But these feathertail glider boxes are so small, I don't think they require that. So I've done 3, just about to do the 4th. For these tabs, I'm just using scrap wood offcuts. I did a few coats with some scrap paint I had left over from another project. I'm not good at the best of times, even worse when I'm trying to hold a camera. You can hear the frogs outside. Lovely, but they are very noisy. I'm going to use these landscape timber screws or construction screws to put the nest boxes into the tree. I'll drive those straight into the tree, but before we get out there, I am going to drill some pilot holes for the screws to go through. So I'm going to do that to the other nest boxes and then we'll go and hang them. I added these spaces made out of conduit between the nest box and the tree, and that'll allow the tree to grow for quite a few years before these have to be rehung. Nothing too fancy about hanging them. Get safely to the right height, and again that'll depend on your species. For these guys, I wanted to put these about 3 to 4 meters up in the tree, which required a small ladder. Then just screw through the pilot holes, through the spaces and into the tree. I do want to emphasize that placement is really important and species specific, so please do your research and make sure you're not doing more harm than good with improper placement. This was a fun, quick little project, and it's one that helps the native wildlife in our area. I hope you found this video interesting or perhaps useful if you plan on making some nest boxes for your own area. My daughter really loves our local boo boo cows, and so that's next on the list. Have a good one.